Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Rob Browne here with you. We're in Atlanta, still up here at Mallory and Tyler and Chandler's, about a mile from Braves Stadium here in Smyrna. Atlanta's so big, I've broken it down to exits. This is exit 19, but it's less than a mile when I want to walk up there to the Battery. I love it. Got a great show in store for today. Tony Barnhart, Mr. College Football, also the author of a book. You need to read this book. If you love sports and you love people and you love the two of them together, read The 19 of Green. We're going to talk about his book again today and what his thoughts are on college football, the college football playoff committee. There's no controversy, no angst over some of the selections, at least not from Florida State, and Georgia fans are completely content and happy with it. Seriously. We're going to get into that. Also, Jason Caldwell, Auburn Undercover, joins us in the second segment, talk about what's going on down on the plains. They'll be going to the Music City Bowl to play Maryland. I remember the last time they played was like November 5th of 1983. Auburn won 35-23. Boomer Esiason was the quarterback for the 7th-ranked Terps. Bobby Ross, VMI graduate, was the coach. It was a heck of a game. Second hour, we'll be joined by Jordan Hill, 24/7 Sports on Georgia. And in the fourth segment, Rodney Orr, Tider Insider over in Tuscaloosa, talking about Alabama. They did make the playoff, but man, there's never a dull moment. I can assure you, with what is going on in college football, and you know the committee, that we have, it's people, and I don't know how many of them are coaches. I don't know how many of them, played football. I don't know who all the people are on the committee. I do know that Boo Corrigan is the chairman of the selection committee, and he's the athletic director at North Carolina State University, a member of the ACC. So, say what you want, but, I don't know, and I want to get into this when Tony joins us, about, was there any problem? Does the ACC have a problem with the fact that Clemson and Florida State have been fairly out in the open about maybe leaving the league for more money? And I don't know. I think that's a question. Okay. And I just wonder, okay. And I'm looking on here. I just wonder, was there any problem with that? But I want to ask Tony that question. Again, Boo Corrigan on that committee, the chairman this year of the committee. Of course, the head of the whole thing is Bill Hancock, and man, he has been incredible. Look, either way, no matter how we look at it, it's created just an absolute ton of interest in college football. Just in fact, okay, ready to bring you Tony. Okay, Tony, I've got you up here. I can't see you. I guess turn on the camera, but I can't see you yet. Are you there?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. I just can't see you.
Okay.
Okay. But anyway, it's been interesting just hearing from everybody, and you have heard probably from a million people about how did this team get selected or that team not get selected.
Right.
And that's what makes college football so interesting and so exciting, is it's the 5th and the 6th teams. But if you're that 5th and 6th team, you're not very, very happy. But what is your initial takeaway from the selection on Sunday?
Well, first of all, the committee got it right. And too much to my amazement, they got it right, because let's face it, Rob, the easy thing for the committee would have been, well, Florida State's 13-0 and forget everything else, and we'll put them in the last slot, and Alabama gets left out. Yeah. That would have been that's the easy thing to do. You can justify it. No Power 5 undefeated champion, Power 5 champion has ever been left out, but that's not a rule. That's a trivia note. That's something you put in there. And what the committee did was they followed their own rules, when not following their rules would have been the easy thing to do. The rules are very, very clear on how you can handle injuries in the playoffs. Same
Yeah.
thing for college basketball. I've seen teams drop from a second seed to an 8th or 9th seed because their best player or players is not going to play. So
Okay.
your heart breaks for the Florida State players. It really does. It really does. But sometimes, as we all know in life, the hard decisions don't seem fair to everybody. So bottom line, committee got it right. Alabama should have been in after recording the best win in college football all year.
Yeah. And I felt like this looking at it objectively. And I remember as an Auburn grad, 2004, and how Auburn fans felt, but 1-2 at the beginning of the season went week 1 through week 11 undefeated. So, I mean, what are you going to do? And then this time, think if you were an LSU fan or a Clemson fan and your team was ranked number 8 and you had to play the number 1 team in the country for your conference championship, the thought of you being able to say, I don't think you would say anything other than at least we should be 4th or 3rd in the rankings if we beat number 1, especially considering Georgia's 29 straight wins and back-to-back national championships. That was the biggest prize. That was the 16-317-pound buck that you were allowed to finally track down.
Yep, it was a fascinating day. You knew we were going to get to this place at some point. Usually it's always worked itself out to where there would be some minor complaint. But this was a clear decision the committee had to make. The SEC champion with 1 loss to Texas at home, or an undefeated ACC champion without its quarterback. Yeah, and that was the decision. It didn't get any more complicated than that. And some people feel very strongly that if 13-0 is 13-0. My good friend Tim Brando wrote a note, says the 0 has to count. Well, it does count, brother Tim. But by the same token, one loss. Alabama's 1 loss is the best 1-loss team we had. And again, they just beat number 1.
Yeah, that means a lot. I mean, you go back and look in 2017 when Auburn beat number 1 Georgia and then played La Monroe, and then 2 weeks after that they beat number 1 Alabama. They were number 2 in the CFP rankings with 2 losses, and they went up to play Georgia, and Kerryon Johnson was banged up, didn't have any backup. Georgia won that game 28-7, but Auburn, they'd given Auburn with 2 losses a chance to make the playoff, the Final Four, and so I've seen it happen before. Here's a question from Alan in Mobile. Do you think the members of the Alliance back in 2022 are regretting their actions, that being the ACC, Big Ten, and Pac-12, no playoff before 24?
Absolutely. To me, it was so ironic that those are the people who were complaining the most, where if they just, if they went absolutely nuts because they were convinced that the SEC was about to take over the world. And so the 12-team playoff didn't get done. It finally did get done after the president's Mark Keenum from Mississippi State basically stepped in and said, this is going to happen. But if the Alliance hadn't got been all out of shape, then we'd have had a 14 playoff this year. And guess what? Florida State would have gotten in.
Yeah, it would have been. I mean, I remember that Alliance, especially the Big Ten and the Pac-12, we thought were such good friends. And then the Big Ten goes and raids the Pac-12 for, Southern Cal and UCLA, now Oregon, Washington. It it really had a lot of reverberations. Here's another one and I gotta throw this one up here, and we're going to talk about your book in just a minute, but this is a question from one of our listeners, and it's Tom the Tiger in Memphis. And this is interesting, how was Liberty playing on New Year's Day and Tulane isn't, when their strength of schedule was ranked 133 out of 133?
Because Tulane lost on Saturday. Tulane lost their conference championship. Tulane went into Saturday as the highest ranked group of 5 team. They went last year as the highest 5. All they got to do is win their conference championship and they're in. Well, they didn't. And Liberty won and they're undefeated. But can't complain there. Tulane had and Willie Fritz had their chance to win. All they got to do is win their game.
Yeah, and he's gone on to Houston now. That I think he's a heck of a coach.
Good. I had a chance to spend some time with him last year. He was I'm on the Bobby Dodd Coach of the Year panel, and he was the Bobby Dodd Coach of the Year last year. Yeah. And so we went to Tulane to present him the award. Very, very impressive guy. I enjoyed visiting with him.
Oh, yeah, and he's done a phenomenal job there. Tony, before I want to talk about your book, and then I want to go back to some more because there's a ton of questions coming in here about the season. But it's such a great story, the 19 of Green. And again, I mean, we all growing up in the South saw all this happening, and it was a big deal at the time. But in the long run, what it's done is it's pulled people together, and in a way that no one, I think, could have ever imagined at the time. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, and Rob, I'll give you an example. Tonight, I am speaking to the Georgia Writers Museum in Edenton, Georgia. They bring authors in to talk about their books, and they have a dinner, and it's all really, really nice. And I will be there tonight, and introducing me to the fine folks there will be Charles Turner, who was my quarterback 52 years ago, and we have remained friends ever since. He was my first African American friend, and we have stayed in touch over the last 52 years. And he was asked to introduce me tonight, and that'll be a special moment.
Yeah, and I think when you look at a book that's written by people firsthand experience, and I go back, you remember the Saturdays down south 8-part series SEC Network did 4 years ago, and there was one of the best scenes was the beginning. I think it was the second edition, and it said after World War II, most young men in the South had a couple of choices, to go back to work in the factories or the fields, or go play sports. One such young man was Patrick Fain-Dye from the tiny town of Blythe, Georgia. And he talked about, we grew up, we were row farmers. We sharecropped about 3,000 acres, and there were about 25 families on the farm, half black, half white. We spent the night at their house. They spent the night at our house. And he said, he goes, and you know how Coach Dye would speak a little slower than I am, but he'd say, come to think of it, I ain't never been segregated a day in my life. And I thought that was a really cool story. And it just segues right in to your book, because people around the country, when they come down here, they see firsthand what sports do for people. It's incredible.
Well, the book is really, it's about football, but it's about how football is a means to an end. Football bonded, when we had a black high school and a white high school in Greene County, Georgia, halfway between Atlanta and Augusta off of I-20. That's where I grew up. We had a black high school and a white high school, and integration came slow in the South. It really did. They drug their feet, but it finally happened in the fall of 1970. Yeah. And football, there's a lot of tension. There's a lot of people who didn't want black children and white children to go to school together. They didn't want it. They were vehemently against it. But what football did, what our football team did, just like Remember the Titans, it's that that kind of story. Oh, this is a real story as opposed to a Hollywood story, and it helped soothe. I've spoken to a lot of people, and it's in the book that the tensions that were created by integration were helped greatly by the fact that we had a football team of 19 guys, 12 white, 7 black, that went out and had a great year, and a year that we'll never forget.
Yeah. And that one thing too, high school football is so big around the country, especially in the South. And it is so big in Georgia. It's unbelievable. It wouldn't be what it is today if that hadn't happened then. That's what the cool message that came from the book. And I'm looking forward to reading it. And I know it's going to be something that people will talk about, because there's not a coach that you've ever interviewed from that era that doesn't look back on it and say, man, that was the most positive thing we ever did.
Right. That's right. And people bond over it's shared experience, Yeah. It was an opportunity for black children and white children to go to school together and realize, what, we're the same. We all want the same things. We have folks who love us, who we want to do well. And again, we're going to have a book signing at my old high school, Greene County High, on Saturday morning. And there are 15 living players from the 19 of Greene. 8 have already committed and will be there.
That's awesome.
So it'll be great.
That is awesome. Tony, let's go now looking at the Florida State-Georgia game. Interesting question from Frank in Memphis. Which team will be more motivated and why? I mean, Kirby Smart and Mike Norvell. Those are two of the best motivators out there. I think in a day or two, they will already have forgotten. They probably already have forgotten about this. They're not pros, but they're close to it.
Well, yeah, you're right. Those two guys are some of the best motivators you're ever going to see. How does Mike Norvell, after getting their heart broken so bad, get them up to play this game? Well, the motivation is, hey, not too many teams have gone 14-0, okay? And fewer teams have gone 14-0 and not won the national championship. It's happened, but not many. And so that is your motivation. Georgia, we've got a chance to win 13 football games. Only a handful of teams in Georgia history, but to post another 13-win team, and good trip to the Orange Bowl. But I will say this: the motivational aspect of this, Rob, is going to be a challenge for both coaches. First of all, we don't know who's going to be there. Yeah. That's the number one thing. You got to find out who's going to play, then figure out how to put your best team together. So it's a unique time for sure. Yeah.
And I was talking with Rich Johnson here in Atlanta yesterday, and going to try to meet him for lunch today at the Mad Italian. I'm looking forward to that. And he made a good point. Said, look at Dylan Gabriel at Oklahoma. He's looking to go into the portal now after Central Florida, then Oklahoma, and then we don't know what Carson Beck's going to do, but we are at free agency, aren't we?
Oh, sure. Absolutely. Absolutely. You're going to see players who have had a lot of success out of school who want to come back to school, and I'll come back to school, but I'm going to test the market and find out what's out there. And what I have available to me may not be better than what I have now, but you know what? I'm going to get in the portal and find out.
Yeah, it's going to be wild. James in Prattville, Alabama, home of Roman Harper. The College Football Playoff Committee has 13 members. How many are coaches, Tony?
I think it's 2. I mean, I've long said there should be a lot more. Jim Grobe, the former Wake Forest coach, is definitely on there. I'm not sure there's another former Power 5 conference on there. They have athletic administrators, people from the business world, people who are good leaders and decision makers and all that. But I've long said I personally would like to see more coaches or former. You can't put a current coach on the committee for a million reasons that are obvious. Okay. But you can do former coaches, and I'd like to see a few more of those.
Yeah, it would be. And the thing about it is Boo Corrigan is the AD at NC State. Jim Grobe, former coach at Wake Forest. You had ACC people on there. The people I've known judges, my grandfather was a judge. He used to always say, when you go in the courtroom, you better get amnesia. I don't care if I know you or not. I'm going by the letter of the law. And I respect that. I mean, I'll tell you that I would fire my own child if they weren't working hard. Right. I don't play politics. And I think that's what happened here is my worst case scenario was if Alabama won 21-20, I picked Alabama to win, but I thought if they won 21-20, it was either going to be nobody from the SEC in the playoff, or they would take Alabama and Georgia would be out. And I mean, that's what happened. Georgia to go from 1-6, though, was that a shock to you?
You know what? I don't get all hung up on the numbers. I get hung up on the record. What have you done? Okay. Who have you beat? And the fact that you would drop from 1-6, and they started slotting teams, and where you were ranked the week before really didn't matter. What is your record today? Who have you beaten? Michigan had to be in. Washington had to be in. Now you're down to Texas and Alabama and Georgia. I mean, Texas and Florida State and Georgia. And hey, if Georgia had won Florida State would be in the playoff today. All right, that's the issue. It wasn't where they were slotted or where they were. It's look at the resume and who did you play and who did you beat. And so, yeah. And again, people have to remember this was an unusual year, and we had that many undefeated teams crowding the top. And there was no when I left Mercedes-Benz Stadium, somebody asked me what I thought. I said, "There's not a slot for Georgia. If you put Alabama in, there's not a slot. I don't care. There's not." Now, having said all of that, is Georgia one of the best 4 teams in college football? Absolutely.
Yes.
Of course.
Yes.
Of course they are.
Yeah.
But that is the way the things fall into place.
Yeah. And in Georgia, the narrative, you and I talked about it this summer and all, oh, Georgia has a weak schedule. I said, well, it's easy to say that in the summer, but when you get into the season, it changes every week. Their last 4 games, they had a gauntlet. They had to play Missouri at home. They had to play Ole Miss at home, and then at Tennessee, and then at Georgia Tech. And Georgia Tech, I want to talk about them in a second, but they faced a gauntlet of 4 teams at the end of the season. I think that was the toughest close of anybody in the top 10, at least, in my opinion. I don't know one close to that.
In July, the schedule looked weak. When we got to November, guess what? Ole Miss, top 10 team. Missouri, top 10 team.
Yeah.
Tennessee, top 25 team.
Yeah.
Georgia Tech, improving team. Yeah, absolutely.
So nobody, I mean, and I kept saying this, I said, it's so easy to say that, but it's teams, as Butch Thompson always says, teams and players are allowed to get better. And this is an interesting question from David in Chattanooga. With the podcast web, you get people from everywhere. Boo Corrigan is the chairman of the CFP. He's the AD at NC State. Was he mad that FSU has talked openly about leaving the ACC? And so is Clemson. I don't think they're the only schools.
I don't think so. I think those kind of things are way overblown. I mean, I have sat in that committee room. I know what it's like. You got a lot of stuff to keep up with and to figure out then who's doing what. My belief is that the fact that Boo Corrigan is not only the AD at NC State. His father, Gene Corrigan, was the commissioner of the ACC and one of the greatest commissioners I ever met in my life.
Yeah,
so
now I know that name.
Yeah, there's a lot of connection there. So and that was a tough position for Boo Corrigan to be in. But I don't think anybody is making a vote in that room that's mad about what you're too busy. There's too much going on, and you can't bring those kind of thoughts to the room. There's too much important work to be done.
Yeah. And then, I've gotten to know Mr. Bill Hancock the last couple of years. You've known him a long time, but, he was 19 years chairman on the basketball selection committee. And I know a lot of people that do know Bill Hancock, and they've got nothing but respect for him. And they don't have any reason to say anything but the truth. I mean, and to hear you say it and other people, bottom line is that's a tough job to have, because college football of all sports is the most personal. I mean, when you cut a team down, it's like telling someone their kid's ugly. That's how I see college football fans. We went down to the championship game Saturday. It was just unbelievable. You couldn't get in that stadium for less than 300. It's the end of a lot of 3rd and 4th generation ticket scalpers, though, Tony. They've gotten rid of the paper tickets.
I'm very aware of that. Yes.
Yeah. Well, let me just tell you, my best scalper in the history of scalpers is a guy named Snake down in Auburn. He always knows where I'm going to be, and he comes up, and he has no last name, but Snake is the greatest of all time. But we were down there Saturday just watching it. It was while people buying an electronic ticket and going up there, and they're going, oh, somebody's already in there, and then those people are gone. It was a wild day. But Tony, I know you're on a tight schedule, but man, the future of college football going to 12 teams next year, to me, is going to be just as bright as ever. 13 and 14 are going to be mad, but that's what keeps interest, isn't it?
Yeah. And look, think about this. First week of the playoffs, 4 teams sit at home. They take the week off, and are you going to be playing for one of those bye weeks to get the first 4 slots, yeah, that's going to be part of this. And then you're going to be busting it to try to be seed 5, 6, 7, or 8. Because if you're seed 5, 6, 7, or 8, guess what? You get to host a playoff game on your campus. How cool is that? So there'll be a lot more access points. And obviously, if you want to get in. And when we get to the end of the season, instead of talking about 6 or 7 teams with a chance to make the playoffs, we'll be talking about 20 teams that have a chance to make. And every game will count. You have a late loss in the year. Let's say Auburn had been a good team, but they lose to New Mexico State. Not that that would ever happen. So, but they lose this game to New Mexico State. Then all of a sudden they could get knocked out of. A good team had a chance to make the playoffs. Every game always counts.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've always been saying this, that the top 25, top 20, they're all going to be set. So we got a chance in November. It's going to keep November from becoming irrelevant in parts of the country. I think it's. I just absolutely, man, it is the best thing we've done. And we might go to 16 eventually, but first 4 get a bye. 5, 6, 7, and 8 are vying for playing a game at home. There you go. So we'll play 16 games if you win it all?
I think it depends. A lot of the times the national champion will be a team that had a bye in the first round. Because they're one of the top 4 teams.
Yes. Oh, damn.
If you get a bye in the first round, you'll play 16. If you don't get a bye in the first round and you got to play all the way through, it's 17.
Wow. That's going to be – Tony, tell people how they can keep up with you and also order your book, The 19 of Green. And as always, appreciate you taking time to join us. And next time we're here, hopefully you'll go to lunch with Rich and me at the Mad Italian. That place is as good as it gets.
Well, thank you, Rob. I appreciate it. Yeah, the best way to get the book, the 19 of Green, is to go to Amazon, do a search on the 19 of Green. And I think they are selling it with like a 30% discount right now. And as we say, it makes a wonderful stocking stuffer for Christmas.
Right. It's a great Christmas gift.
We'll be traveling tonight and on Saturday doing book signings, and that'll be a special time.
Yeah, it will be, man. And that is tonight. And look forward to hearing from you again soon. And have a great day. Have a safe trip.
All right, Rob, take care.
You too. All right, that's Tony Barnhart, Mr. College Football, man. Absolutely love that guy. He works. When you go to a game, you go to media days, you go to a coaches convention, Tony Barnhart is walking around, meeting, interacting, getting the story, true grit journalism. He ought to be teaching a class in journalism, because a lot of the young writers, they try to just throw stuff out there and hope they get clicks. As Brendan says, you could go to get a click farm in India or China to get you all the clicks you want. But Tony's legit. And this book, The 19 of Green, great Christmas gift, great present, stocking stuffer, what have you. It is a true story. It's what makes the South and high school sports and college sports so important to people, because of what it does to bring people together. Jason Caldwell is going to join us here in just a moment. Before we get him on here, we're going to do a quick thing, take a quick commercial break, and then we will be right back with Jason Caldwell.
Welcome to Rumble, bringing half boxing, half strength, and 10 rounds of fire. Pull up, say what's up to our studio team, check in and grab your gear. Don't have gloves, don't have wraps, don't worry, we got you.
You think you better than battle?
Find your starting spot. B means bag, F means floor. Make your way to the studio, find where all the magic happens, give Jab a little love on the way in, or snap a pic for the gram. Tap in with your trainer and get ready to bring the thunder. Eyes up at your Rumble trainer, fitness pro, DJ, MC extraordinaire. We'll walk you through our 6 punch.
All right.
In a perfect world, you'd set a health goal and results would happen overnight. In this world, the real world, it takes time, dedication, and the right support to achieve your best self. The Vitamin Shop's health enthusiasts are here to make sure you're not wasting a single moment on the wrong supplements. From the highest quality sports nutrition and superfoods to the most sought after trends, you'll find a huge variety of science-backed solutions for every goal. And the people to help guide you along the path to greatness.
Unbelievably, every 2 minutes in our communities, a child is either bought or sold for sex. I am Ari Dickey, board member for the Nashville Anti-Human Trafficking Coalition. Join me and millions of others in our fight against human trafficking and for its victims by helping to educate the most vulnerable among us, our middle and high school students. Go to nhtcoalition.org, become a partner, and help keep our families safe, because none of God's children are for sale.
All right, Rob Browne here with you on this Tuesday morning edition of Sidelines. Let's bring Jason Caldwell on in here. And great stuff, as always, with Mr. College Football, Tony Barnhart, here in Atlanta. We're still here in Atlanta for another day or so. It's my wife's birthday tomorrow, so I think she wants to stay here and celebrate with Mallory and Tyler and the granddaughter, Chandler. So do whatever she wants to do. Got 2 computers set up in here. Jason Caldwell, you are everywhere. Man, the content on that Auburn Undercover with DJ Barber, on the field, Clay Chalkville, it's just I don't know if y'all ever stop. It's like the ticker at the bottom of the screen, but it is a pleasure to have True Grit journalist on here, Alabama Sports Writer of the Year in 2021. And Jason, wow, where do you get started? That news Friday evening, I'm at dinner up here in Atlanta, and just boom, Cam Coleman flips to Auburn. But you always said that one ain't over yet, and that's a big get for Auburn from 32 minutes up the road in Phoenix City.
Yeah, kind of wanted to, it kind of, I've kind of talked about it a little bit. It kind of reminded me a little bit of Keldrick Falk. I always kind of thought he was going to wind up at Auburn.
Yes.
But it was the right circumstance, and it took the right coaching staff and the right fit and all those things involved for it to happen. I think it happens even without Jimbo Fisher getting fired, but I think that only helps speed up the process a little bit, for Cam. And I think the relationships with the current guys, the current commitments, when you think about Walker White, but I think especially when you think about Perry Thompson, Bryce Kane, and Malcolm Simmons, some of those other guys, I think it's a group of receivers and a group of offensive players that are excited about playing together. And I think that had a big part of this. So, massive news. We were actually on our way to Parker, Clay Chalkville. So we were about getting over Double Oak Mountain in Birmingham when the news hit. So we had everything ready to go. We didn't know when it was going to happen, or for that matter, even if it was going to happen, but felt like it would. And so we're able to get some things done pretty quickly while on the road to another high school game, and turn around tomorrow and get to see Cam play in Tuscaloosa tomorrow night, the first game of the Super 7. Loaded once again, Central and Thompson playing for I think the 4th time in 6 years against each other. So should be a pretty exciting game in Tuscaloosa.
Yeah, it will be an incredible game. And looking, would you say that 20 years ago you'd be looking to sign a running back class like this? Now it's a class of wide receivers. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think a lot of times the NFL follows what high school, college, and it has in terms of the Cam Newton, Lamar Jackson, Jalen Hurts. The NFL has followed what started in high school and carried over to college, and now NFL, where hey, you can win using athletic quarterbacks that maybe aren't classic pocket passers, but you can do those things. We've seen it, but I think it's the other way around in football, where if you're going to win at the highest level, you got to have elite playmaking wide receivers, and it comes back to that. And so we've seen it from Alabama. Georgia's probably the one outlier where you went, they didn't, but they did have George Pickens and they've had Ladd McConkey, but they also had a freak difference maker at tight end. And so that's where we've seen the Kansas City Chiefs and the San Francisco 49ers and others. But you have to be able to make plays in the passing game to win at the highest level. There's just no other way around it. And that's where you start looking at this playoff and you go, where do those plays come from? Alabama's started to do some of those things. Jermaine Burton has done it. Michigan, very little of those plays. Do they have enough of those plays to go out and win? Texas has some guys that can do those things. Yeah. You start looking at that. But, no question about it now. You look and running backs in college have now become almost like they are in the NFL, where you go, just plug that guy in and play another one. But you got to have those wide receivers to win.
Yeah, it's funny. You go back years ago, running back would get mad if he didn't get 25 or 30 carries a game. I think now 12 to 15 is a big day. They've bought into the running back by committee that, hey, if I want to make it to the NFL, my body's got to be the best it can possibly be.
Yeah, I think I've gone back and looked, and I have to go back and make sure of this, but I don't believe Jarquez Hunter's ever carried the ball 20 times. He's been here 3 years. He does not have a 20 carry game in his career. Now, a couple of those he was behind Tank Bigsby, but I don't believe he's had a 20 carry game in his career in 3 years. And that's part of the reason why, though, that's a guy that could return and come back, because he doesn't have that wear and tear on his body. So, used to, when you think about Herschel Walker in today's world, would be a guy that NFL teams go, I don't know if I want to touch that guy as many carries as he had in 3 years. How much is left? And but you also don't use guys as much as you used to. So it's a much different world.
It is. It really is. Kevin in Montgomery, is Auburn filling their needs in recruiting this year?
Yeah, I think they've done a really good job so far. Yeah. If you started talking about where you had to go to fill needs coming off of year one, and a lot of those you have to figure out, hey, because it starts early. It's a really early process. We just talked about wide receiver. There's no bigger need on this team than wide receiver, and they had to go do that. But I think about wide receiver, linebacker, edge rusher. To me, those were the three positions where you absolutely, if you're Auburn, have to get better from a talent standpoint. And so you look at wide receiver, what they've already done, still recruiting Ryan Williams. And so that's one that could potentially add if he reclassifies, which I think will come here in a few days. So that could turn January into a wild time. But wide receiver had to start there, and you've done a good job there in adding to the talent level tremendously. Edge rusher, we looked, and you did not have a scholarship edge rusher on the roster from last year on this team. Yeah, you went out and added guys, but you've already seen it. Jalen McLeod, I expect to return. I believe he'll be back. And so you start there, but you got to have talent. And so they went out and you added Jamonta Waller from Picayune, Mississippi, the guy that I think will be tremendous. Joe Phillips from right here in Booker T. Washington, Tuskegee, that's 6'2", 250, big physical kid. So you've added some talent there. I wouldn't be surprised if you go out and try to find an experienced, another edge guy to bridge the gap a little bit to those young guys out of the portal, but done a good job there. And then linebacker, you've added DeMarcus Riddick, DJ Barber that we talked about. You've added some tremendous guys there. I think another spot where can you find maybe an experienced guy to help you bridge the gap to take over a little bit of that role as a true maybe middle linebacker. So I think those were the positions I think that were of huge need. What's interesting is that offensive line, they did such a good job of addressing that last year that I think it's really, can you find a true left tackle to come in from the portal, maybe junior college. If you got a true left tackle and move Dylan Wade inside the guard, you've actually done a great job already in starting to fill some of those huge needs on the offensive line, which is pretty incredible.
I want to go back to Keldrick Falk at a Highland home, and then his little brother has committed for the class of 25. Falk is 6'6", 288 pounds. He's an edge rusher, interior. Where do you see his future and the place he can have the greatest impact?
Here's the thing about him. He's just scratching the surface of his ability.
Yeah.
But this is a guy that also had a hand injury where he wasn't even really able to work out much until late in the summer last year. He'll now have a full workout session. I think he's a guy that weighs 295 next year and is probably more of a 3 technique inside guy. Those are the guys where you got to have a guy that can create havoc inside. I think that's where he's going to, because he's not going to get smaller. I mean, that's not going to happen. And you look at a guy like that, and somebody asked me about Jay Ratliff, and they go, how big was Jay Ratliff? Now, it's a different game. I mean, it's 20 years ago, but Jay Ratliff, I looked, and Jay Ratliff made the move, and he was 278 when he played inside. He was 6'5". You think about similar skill set, the guy that watching Keldrick, I think the more he got used to the contact, the better he became. And I thought for a long time he was going to be better in the stand up in the open space, but he did a really good job of taking the contact. And so I think adding another 10 pounds this year, I think eventually he's a guy that is like Chris Jones. Now, if he could ever be Chris Jones in the future and that kind of production, it would be incredible. But Chris Jones was always a bigger body. He's a bigger guy now, but he's an interior guy, but he's also an interior pass rusher, which makes him extremely valuable.
Yeah.
I think Keldrick Falk's the guy that has those kind of tools.
Yeah. What about Thomas? How deep is the class of 24 in Alabama high school? Last year was what? 22 4-stars, 7 5-stars, and Auburn signed how many of those?
Yeah, I think it's been 4 or 5 total top 10 players in the last 4 or 5 years when you start talking about Auburn and what they've been able to do. But I'll pull it up real quick. Let me see.
But
this is an extremely deep class when you start talking about getting down to Sterling Dixon as the last ranked, 4 or 5-star player in the state of Alabama. You're talking about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. You're talking about 11 4 and 5-star players in the state of Alabama at the moment. And, you're talking about, 4 of those kids being committed to Auburn at the moment. And that doesn't include Bryce Kane, who's a 4-star in terms of composite. So there's it's a really deep class, and it continues to get deeper when you start talking about the guys. And the transfer portal world has really changed when you start talking about how classes are built, because there's guys in the state of Alabama that I believe are definitely D1 football players that are borderline SEC players that aren't getting looks right now because everything's changed the way recruiting's done. People, especially quarterback. That's the hardest one right now. Used to, you'd sign 2 quarterbacks and high school kids, and somebody would go have a chance to develop. Well, now if you're looking at a lot of colleges, they're going, hey, we're going to take our shot at a guy who's been in school for 2 years that still has 3 years left. Even if he hasn't played, he's been in the system, maturity level, all those things. And it's really hurt the quarterback evaluation. But really deep 24 class, 25's really good class again. Rob, we brought it up a bunch. We talked about it, and I said it. I said Georgia's 10 years ahead of Alabama. But you look at the number of prospects in the state of Alabama now, and it's a state that you can absolutely win and win at a high level by making sure you stay at home. And that's what this staff has done a good job of.
Yeah, I mean, again, a couple of years ago, you said the state of Alabama is where the state of Georgia was 10 years ago. Georgia's putting out about 250 Division I players a year. State of Alabama is close to 150, and Auburn and Alabama, between the two of them, this year might sign in-state 17 total. So that leaves 133 for everybody else.
Yep.
Not that they're not good players. Hey, Auburn missed on Usi Umenyiora and DeMarcus Ware from Auburn High School. We all know about that. You can't get everybody.
Yeah, no, there'll be lots of guys, and it's really one of the reasons why I still continue to be amazed that the in-state schools. I mean, I think South Alabama's doing a good job. Troy's doing a better job, but I still continue to be baffled by UAB and their lack of presence in the state of Alabama at times. And how you could have been building from in-state for years, and it would have helped you build a fan base, and it would have helped you do some of those things. And there's a lot of good players in the state that are going to go elsewhere that you might be able to entice to stay at home. And, there's, kids committed to Arkansas in a 25 class and other places. And so, lots of talent in the state of Alabama once again. And it doesn't show any signs of slowing down with all the young guys.
Yeah. And you're out there. The difference is you hit more high schools in Alabama than anybody I know of, certainly covering Auburn, but you also know the Georgia and the Florida Panhandle, what's in Tennessee and Mississippi. There's great high school football played in the mid-state of Tennessee. And then in Georgia, we're here in Smyrna, but you've got Beaufort and you've got all these. I mean, it used to be South Georgia was the king.
Yeah, the greater Atlanta area is now that's a massive scope. I mean, it used to be the greater Atlanta area was, you got out, 30 minutes away from the airport and you were in the woods. Well, now you're 2.5 hours away and you're still in greater Atlanta.
Exactly.
And there's prospects everywhere. And so the park views of the world, you mentioned Beaufort, but I mean, you get up to the Cartersville area where, Auburn got a commitment from a 2026 offensive lineman a couple weeks ago from that area. Huge talent pool. Thinking about Trevor Lawrence's of the world and Ronnie Browne years back. So, Georgia is a talent-rich state because of population and because that football is still important. Yeah, and so that adds to it.
Yeah, and Kennesaw, Justin Fields. I mean, they're everywhere up there. And you look at 30 years ago, there's 2.5 million people over here. Now there's 6.5 million. Used to be 5 counties. Now it's spread out over 22 counties. It is absolutely massive. And you look at South Georgia, Auburn used to have I-75 to the Florida line, I-85 down to the Alabama line. That corridor over there to the Chattahoochee, that was kind of Auburn's turf. And they did really well. But Auburn's back in Georgia, it's fair to say now, isn't it?
Yeah, I think they've done a good job of kind of getting some hooks back in the state. And obviously it's difficult when you start talking about it because – for a long time, for, 40, 50 years, you had Florida State starting to come in a little bit of South Georgia because of the connections there. And that was always a place. But it was mostly Florida State, Auburn, and Georgia in the state of Georgia. That was it. Clemson would slide in every once in a while and do some of their things too. Alabama rarely went that way. Alabama went to Mississippi, Louisiana, Tennessee. Rarely did they come to Georgia. Well, now Alabama started recruiting the state of Georgia and Michigan and Ohio State and others. So it's become a much more fertile recruiting ground for everybody. I couldn't remember, teams like Stanford and Michigan and others really ever recruiting. And now those teams all come to the South, every one of them. And so it's changed completely.
And you look at Auburn and the receivers that Auburn brought in, those 3 in the portal, you put the stats in Auburn Undercover, but tell the fans how hard it is to take a guy like Jair Shorter from North Texas, who led the nation in yards per catch. And what did he do at Auburn in his year there?
Yeah, it's one of the things that I think may be most important when you start talking about portal now, and Auburn didn't really have a choice last year. They were such a late thing. I think getting people and getting players in for spring may be the most important thing because especially when you're taking a 1-year guy from the portal, you're taking that guy to play right away. You're not taking that guy to develop. Caleb Burton and Jair Shorter are the opposites. They came in at the same time. They had the same timeline. But one of those guys that you go, well, we've got 3 years with in Caleb Burton. We know it's going to take a little while for him to kind of get up to speed. The other guy, you're going, we got 1 year with this guy. We need him to play right now because we brought him in as an experienced guy.
Yeah.
Well, when you didn't go through spring, you're not up to speed on the offense. You don't feel real comfortable. And we saw that with Jair Shorter. We saw it with Shane Hooks too. And then, the third one of those, Nick Mardner was hurt and missed a lot of time. So you brought in 3 experienced guys who really didn't have a chance to kind of grow in the offense. And then you had to throw them in and say, hey, go play. Didn't work out well. So I think spring practice is vitally important for the transfers, especially the older guys that you're expecting to come in and play right away.
Yeah. Go back 20 years ago, some coaches were really heavy in junior college. They went really heavy in it. And eventually that comes and just, you overdo it. You've got to build from high school. As a program gets better, and you pointed this out a few weeks ago, don't look for Auburn to go get 20 guys out of the portal. Look for them to be more selective and sort of cherry pick maybe half a dozen.
Yeah, I think you'll probably take a few more than that this year as you're still trying to get to that point. I think eventually where you'd like to be is 3 to 4. Yeah, you go, hey, 3 to 4 spots where we need a guy. Maybe this guy hadn't developed like we thought. Maybe we got an injury here that you need to fill in. I think that's where you'd like to be. I think it's going to be almost impossible to say, hey, yeah, we're just going to build from the portal every year. I don't think that's sustainable. And you mentioned the junior college ranks. I think back to Nick Fairley. Nick Fairley was as dominant as any player I can remember.
Yeah.
In his second year. But it took him the end of the first year. The bowl game against Northwestern in Tampa was when the first time I went, okay, that's the guy that I thought we might see. Then he carried it over into year number 2. That's kind of the portal where you're going, okay, if you're asking all those guys to be ready to go in year 1, that's not realistic. And so how many of those guys can you build with, or can you build from inside? Can you keep guys there that maybe are developing that don't play right away? That's probably the golden ticket, because that's how you develop, is by getting guys in your program, keeping them there and going, hey, your time is going to come. But it's hard because now they see immediate playing time elsewhere, when that's not realistic either.
I want to talk about a guy who's been at Auburn a long time. And I know my friend, Dana Marquez loves him. It's Jalen Simpson. This is a guy that just, I'm just the way I am, call it old school or whatever, but that's a guy that Auburn people, I believe, when I think he can play in the NFL, but whatever happens, he's always going to be able to come back and he will be an Auburn man. He didn't leave when things were really bleak. But nobody knows these guys better than you and Mark Murphy and Justin Clemente and Philip Dukes and Philip Marshall. God, Philip is just like a great bottle of wine. He just keeps getting better. He just, you've got a cabal of true grit journalists there that whatever happens, you put a perspective on it that's unique and it makes sense. But talk about that.
Yeah. Jalen is a guy that reminds me a little bit of Bryce Browne from a basketball standpoint.
Yeah.
Those are guys that nowadays it's hard to find that guy. Now, Jalen played, but he moved back and forth from corner to safety for a couple of years. It wasn't the early impact that he had hoped for, but he just kind of kept going and kept fighting. And Bruce Pearl's talked about it a little bit, but the days of a guy like Bryce Browne in basketball are probably over with, because you're probably not going to sign a guy to develop over the first couple of years, because you're worried, well, that guy's just going to leave before he gets to that point. Yeah, I'll go sign a guy that's a transfer that's more ready to play. So those guys are starting to get left by the wayside a little bit. Jalen's a guy that just continued to develop. I agree. I think he's a guy that's going to play in the NFL. He's a great special teams player. I think he'll be a guy that's valuable as a nickel probably, and can play kind of that roaming safety, because you're not asking guys to be Ronnie Lott anymore, because that's not part of the game. And so I think Jalen's a guy that, we get to see less and less of as this continues to evolve.
Well, I mean, and nobody knows him better than Dana and you and the people that are around the guys day in and day out. But I got a ton of respect for that. And also Cameron Stutz. God, I mean, that's a 5-6 year guy from Killeen up in North Alabama near Florence, whatever. You see it, but you write. I think you write how you feel and how you see it, and I think that's great. And one thing about basketball, everybody knows. Of course, no one will not let you know that Auburn lost to App State the other night. Talk about what that loss means at this point in the season, and then what Auburn's doing right now to get better and where you see them, because conference play is going to be here before we know it.
Yeah, no, I think those are games that most people don't go play. Most people don't go play at App State, and it's a difficult environment when you're playing at a situation like that. But you get exposed a little bit in some of those environments, and I think that's what Bruce Pearl wanted. Obviously, you want to win and get exposed. They didn't do that. The thing that for me, and I mentioned it yesterday in my Monday Morning Quarterback, this is almost like the golfer. This is a golfer, Auburn basketball is, who is struggling with his putting, and a couple of putts fall, and then it opens everything up. I think it's the same thing for Auburn. This team's going to shoot the ball much better. They've had some struggles the last couple of times out. Once a couple of shots start falling, then I think I think you'll see a team that scores it and gets better and better. But right now they're struggling with a little confidence issue, and I think they picked it up defensively. They focused on that. And I think it's been so much of a focus that it's probably hampered them some shooting the basketball. But I think it's a strictly confidence thing. But you have to adjust to how teams are playing you, and we'll see if they can do that.
Yeah, I mean it's early, but I think, how would you react if you went out and did something? If you had not been to the gun club or gun range a lot and shot, and you go out your first time hunting and you miss 90% of your targets, I mean, you're going to go practice more. That's just what happens. And if there's anything about a Bruce Pearl team, is that they're inherently competitive. You're not going to even be around that program if you're not. I mean, every coach on there looks like he could suit up and play.
Yeah.
I mean, you think Stephen Pearl's not passionate?
Yeah, and you're right. I mean, like, that's the thing that people feel like, well, just go practice more. They shoot all the time and they practice all the time. And sometimes it's a matter of just going, hey, yeah, that's what it's supposed to look like. And so it can be as simple as that. And so team that shot the ball really well throughout the summer into the preseason and early in the year. I think, you got to get used to doing some different things and maybe playing some different ways. And I think the shots will start falling again.
Yeah. I mean, it's the old saying, you're going to learn as much from the people that you beat as you will from the people that beat you. You just got to keep an open mind and not fall apart after a loss. Like, Jason, look, I know you've got a big day ahead of you. Let people know again how they can follow you, keep up with you and all the great content. And I know you're heading to Tuscaloosa. Tomorrow it starts? Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday?
Nope, just Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So it'll be 7A Wednesday night, which is Central Phoenix City and Thompson, where you have Cam Coleman committed from Central Phoenix City for Auburn, Caleb Harris committed from Thompson, but you have a ton of young talent on the field. Dalen Upshaw is a 2025 wide receiver at Central that Auburn's already offered. Obviously, you look at Anquan Fagan's 2025 safety, the 5-star safety at Thompson that Auburn's already offered. Colbin Landry's a 2026 wide receiver that Auburn's offered in basketball. He's 6'4", but he got 11 touchdown catches in football, and this is his first year playing football. Oh. He could be a hybrid tight end down the road.
What's his name again?
Colbin Landry. And so you'll notice him. He's a big kid. So a lot of talent on both sides of the ball. Al Waldrop, 2025 offensive lineman at Central that Auburn's already offered. So loaded. But then you look at 3A, 1A, and 5A on Thursday, and then 4A, 2A, 6A on Friday. 6A Friday night finishes with Sarah Land and Ryan Williams, KJ Lacey, Antonio Coleman. No relation to Auburn Antonio Coleman, but all those are 2025 now at the moment. And two of them committed to Alabama, one committed to Texas, and KJ Lacey at quarterback. On the other side, Clay Chalkville, Jalen Mbakwe, 5-star, is committed to Alabama, playing quarterback for Clay Chalkville. 6'8", massive offensive lineman that's committed to Oregon at the moment currently, but DJ Barber, middle linebacker from Clay Chalkville, that's committed to Auburn. Loaded front end, back end, and good games in between, and we'll have coverage from there. Got lots of portal stuff going on as well, and got a deal to sign up now at Auburn Undercover as well.
Sorry we didn't have anything to talk about.
Yes, there are lots of stuff going on.
You are phenomenal, man. Thank you so much, man, for taking your time to join us, and have a great day. And everybody go to Auburn Undercover. One of your colleagues, Jordan Hill's coming up here next. So, man, you all, that's a great group that has come out of where you came from, and we can't follow the sport without you, man. Take care. We'll be right back for hour number 2 on Sidelines.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Rob Browne back with Jordan Hill, 24/7 Sports covering Georgia. Jordan had Tony Barnhart on in the first segment. We're over in Smyrna at Mallory and Tyler and Chandler's, and we asked him about the playoff selection, and we went down to Mercedes-Benz Stadium Saturday for the game. Unbelievable atmosphere, although it's the end of a lot of third and fourth generation scalpers' careers, because these paper tickets are gone. Yet there were still people trying to sell paper tickets, but now people get burned by buying an electronic ticket, going in to the stadium or trying to get in. Oh, I'm sorry, someone's already used that one. So it's things are in a turmoil, but I know that my man Snake is still alive and well in Auburn, the greatest scalper in the history of scalpers. But Tony said he thought before the game that if Georgia lost, there wouldn't be a slot for Georgia. Were you looking at it like that? Because I kept saying last week, worst case scenario, Bama wins 21-20 and neither SEC team gets in the playoff. I picked Alabama to win, but I still thought Georgia would be in the playoff.
No, I really wasn't surprised. I actually wrote on Friday, the day before the game, that there was a real chance if Georgia lost that it could wind up out of the playoff. I thought maybe they had a shot if it was close, and it was close, but they needed help. And, there was just too many teams. I mean, even with Georgia out of it, you still see an undefeated Florida State get left out. It's a situation. I wrote about this on Saturday, or actually Sunday morning, that, Georgia, had really nobody to blame but themselves for missing the playoff, because we knew that there was a lot of teams still alive. And, they were probably rooting like crazy for Iowa to beat Michigan, or rooting for Louisville to beat Florida State, which wound up not even mattering because Florida State still didn't make the playoff. But no, I thought there was a real possibility, just because, again, we're talking about a totally different situation if Auburn is able to stop Alabama on 4th and 31, because, to me, what boiled down to the biggest issue Georgia faced was all of a sudden it had to be compared to Alabama when it came to a playoff spot, and Alabama had the head-to-head. How could you look at that situation if it came down to we're either putting Alabama or Georgia in? You can't put Georgia in because they lost that head-to-head, and they lost it fair and square. So, yeah, I thought there was a real chance that, they could miss the playoff, and they were going to need some help after they lost to have a shot to make it. And ultimately they did not get the help they had to have.
Yeah. And Georgia, they'll get over it. And I said this with Tony Barnhart, that Mike Norvell, Kirby Smart, two of the best motivators in all of college football. For a day or two, there'll be some commiserating over not getting in, but they're pros, the players as well as the coaches, and they know what they've got to do. They represent their university. They've got pride, and they also know that NFL scouts are going to watch how they react to adversity. They're keeping tabs on that stuff, don't they?
Oh, for sure. And the thing to me, Kirby said it on Sunday when they had the teleconference for the bowl. He was asked about people opting out and, what that's going to look like. And he said, look, we're going to give these guys 3 or 4 days, because they're coming off a very hard season. It was week to week. They were super banged up. After the game, they talked about guys like Ladd McConkey and Brock Bowers going like 15 days without practicing because they were really banged up. he said, you kind of need to give everybody a little bit of a break. I'm very emotional, having lost that game. But yeah, I mean, I think they understand. And I think, you probably see a few guys opt out. I haven't heard of anybody yet, but I'm sure it's going to happen. And I do think the guys who opt out, I wouldn't be surprised if it's some of the guys we've seen on these injury reports going down the end of the season. I mean, a lot of guys were really banged up and playing through pain. But, it's just going to be one of those situations where I think a lot of guys are going to show up and want to end this season the right way. I think about Kendall Milton, who we talked to after the game, and he was asked what he planned to do. At that point, we didn't know if they were going to make the playoff, but he was asked, if Georgia doesn't make the playoff, are you still playing? And he said, yeah, I want to be out there with my brothers. I want to make sure we finish this thing the right way. So I think you will see some opt-outs along the way. Don't know who that will be, but I think for the most part, you're going to see guys show up who want to end this season with another win. And I do think there's a little bit of motivation that you're playing an undefeated Florida State, and that Georgia will want to prove that, that they can beat the Noles.
I mean, I agree with you. And I like Kirby Smart. We'll give him 3 or 4 days, but I bet he'll also say to him, if you're going to quit on us, go ahead and quit now. I don't need you quitting a week before the game. And that's what they do. If you ever talk to anyone who's ever been through OCS or Bolick or Ranger School, quit now. Quit now. Please do us a favor. Because if you do it in combat, it's not going to work out well. And so that's their theory. But you've got to weed them out. I like how Kirby Smart, I don't care what school you're a fan of. It doesn't matter that I'm an Auburn guy. I can say this. He'd be a fun guy to play for. He'd be a lot of fun to play for because he is passionate about everything he does.
Definitely.
I mean, yeah, so that's good.
Yeah, and I was just going to say on your point, I mean, he said as much, and it's not a new stance, but he said, when it comes to the team and it comes to opt-outs, you're either in or you're out. And they learned this the hard way when they played Texas in that Sugar Bowl. I think they had just missed out on going to the playoff. I think that would have been the year that Alabama beat them in the SEC title game. And they showed up flat. And there were guys that didn't want to be there. And I think, if I'm remembering right, that was the year that DeAndre Baker made the trip and then decided kind of while he was there, look, I'm not going to play in the game. And I think that's a lesson learned by the coaches. And that's sort of where Kirby Smart, the point he made on Sunday, you're either in or you're out. You're either playing or if you're not, God bless you, good luck with whatever's next. And I think that's the way they're going to take this. And I think that's a smart approach because taking guys on this trip, it's not going to do you any good if they are wishy-washy. And I think Kirby said as much, like, if you're thinking about it, you should probably not go. If you're not sold that you want to play in this game, then just don't. And the team will be better off for it.
Well, and I don't think fans, you get it because you're around the program daily. I don't think the average fan understands how much power and influence the coaches really have. A lot of fans think these players can go flip off the coach the day before the game and go, I'm quitting. There's going to be a conversation that the NFL executives are going to have with that coach, head coach, position coach, strength trainer, could be the librarian, the person that cleans up the cafeteria, and they're going to ask about you. What does Nick Saban say? There's 2 conversations you have. There's Jordan Hill is a great kid. He's always the first one to practice. He gets everybody going in the warm-ups and the stuff. He never misses mass. He's a great family man, loves his wife, loves his family, never misses any class. He's a straight A student, but then he said it's the but conversation that costs you a lot of money. And that's what these kids need to pay attention to, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think a piece of it too, Georgia has always had an open door policy with NFL brass. If a coach wants to come in and watch practice, if an executive wants to come in and see how things are done, they do that. And one, I think it's very smart, and it's paid off because a lot of Georgia guys have gotten drafted. But two, you never know when a guy is watching on the sideline. If you get mad during practice or something, you may have someone who's got you on a scouting list. It's like, I don't know about this. You know what I mean? But I think that, I think one of Kirby's greatest attributes is the fact that he played. And I think that there is a real understanding that he has with players. And I would go tell people, Kirby Smart All Access put out a little bit of his post-game speech. I wrote a story about it this morning. But you can tell, that he's bought in with these guys and he knows these guys. And, he told them after that loss, how much they meant to him and, everything he would do for them. I think that there is that buy-in. And then I think if you don't have that buy-in, it's really tough to get guys to stick around for a game like this. Again, I'm sure there will be a few guys who opt out, but I'm not expecting it to be just like a mass exodus. And one, I think a big piece of that is, Georgia's very mindful of the guys that they recruit and making sure that, people are bought in and care about the team. But two, I think there is a shared pride in the university, in the football program with these players like Kirby has. I think he values that, and I think you're going to see that with what this roster looks like going into this bowl game.
Yeah, and Kirby and his wife are investors in the University of Georgia. They're paid well, and they damn well should be. But just look, there's a classroom in the Terry College of Business named after him and his wife, and he does a lot of other things people don't really talk about, but he does them because he loves the University of Georgia, and it comes through the way he coaches and the way he recruits and for his players. There's so many people are so angry about the committee and the selections and all like that. But in a damn thing you can do about it, I expect Georgia to show up and keep this thing going and get the 30th win in the last 31 games. The flip side is, look what happens when a winning streak is broken. Clemson has not recovered from a couple of years ago. They're not the same program. Kirby Smart pays attention. 71 miles to the northeast is Clemson. So I know he has a business degree. I think he's got a PhD in psychology.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be really interesting. And, we still don't know what this roster will look like next year, but it's not going to be easy for Georgia, Rob. They're going to play at Texas. They're going to play at Alabama. There's going to be other teams on the schedule that are going to challenge them. I mean, it's no gimme going into next year. And, I think Kirby has always done a very good job of being introspective when things are working, when things are not, and deciding what needs to change, what do we need to do differently. And yeah, I mean, as weird as it sounds, to look at what they've had the success of, these last few years, that there probably does need to be a good bit of introspection in looking at what needs to change, what needs to be different going into next year. But yeah, Kirby's always been very good about not only looking at what needs to change, but taking advice from the people around him, whether that's support staff or his coordinators or assistant coaches. He does a very good job of hearing things out and making good decisions for the better part of the program. That's going to be something he's got to do again this year because, like I said, it's going to be pretty tough sledding when you go into 2024.
Yeah, and you look at Brock Vandergriff, a 5-star quarterback, big redhead. He's going into the portal. Means Gunnar Stockton is the backup to Carson Beck out of Jacksonville, Leonard Skinner High School. But look, the Mike Bobo this year, give him a grade, A, B, C, D, F. I'd say A for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I give him an A. I think, there were some calls in that Alabama game that I think he'd like to have back. I think there were some decisions that were made that wound up hurting Georgia. A lot of trying to run east to west on Alabama just didn't work. I mean, what was killer was that attempted end around that gets fumbled and it sets up. And to Georgia's defense's credit, they only gave up 3 points on that drive.
Yeah.
They wound up losing by 3 points. So I think on the whole, Mike has done a very good job. He's in Fayetteville, Arkansas right now. I think about 1 o'clock today, they're going to have the Broyles Award. He's up for it, and I do think it's earned. A lot of people on the Junkyard message board were not happy with Mike. I think there are things he'd like to have back from that game, but that doesn't erase everything he has done, the success Georgia's had. They didn't get it done in the end, but lost by 3 points and just had a few plays here or there that went Alabama's way.
And it continues. I think Nick Saban and Alabama have won 17 in a row at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. And it's just it just goes to show you got to be ready to play anywhere. And it's a decided, but Atlanta. Obviously it's Georgia. And the Georgia Tech fans, I think, you'll be smelling mothballs soon. They're coming out of hibernation. But they got them a pretty good coach. But then there's Auburn and Alabama fans everywhere in Atlanta. If those play a home game, I mean, Auburn's playing Indiana, State Farm Arena next week. By the way, we walked by State Farm Arena after the Georgia game in Alabama. There was some kind of a concert going on in there, and the smell of skunk ape weed, it was so bad. I needed a gas mask. But I don't know if it's legal in Georgia or not, but it was crazy. But, you know, the thing about that I see with college football now, that Kirby Smart has those guys. He talked about this with Carson Beck before the season. He believes in what we're doing here. And if a coaching staff will invest their time with these kids, you won't have that many of them transferring out.
Right. And, you know, it'll be interesting to see what it looks like with Georgia. You know, as we're talking right now, they've had 6 guys go in the portal. I'm trying to remember last year what the number was, but on the whole, you know, when we've had these spurts with the transfer portal window, we haven't seen as many departures as I've thought. You know, I go in and I kind of have a list, just generally, you know, a lot of it's just about playing time and depth, saying, okay, this guy will probably leave, this guy will probably leave. And you'll have guys leave, and I think that's only natural in the portal era. But a lot of times these guys stick around. These guys, you know, either want to continue to get better, or these guys think they have a chance to get playing time. You know, Kirby is a very good motivator when it comes to guys to get them to stick around, to get them to buy into what they've done so far. I mean, look at, you know, go back to last year with Amarius Mims. I mean, it looked like he's gone. He's in the portal. He ain't coming back.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think he was sold what he could do and the development he could have if he came back to Georgia, not only by Kirby, but also some of his teammates. Comes back, and, you know, I think he's got a chance to be a first-round pick. So Kirby knows how to motivate those guys, how to get those guys to build something special at Georgia and have the buy-in that it makes it hard to leave.
Yeah, and again, we talk about NIL for Amarius Mims. No matter what happens, he stays, gets his degree from Georgia. Whether he makes it in the NFL or not, he's always going to have that Georgia circle of influence he can lean on. And he will have earned his spot at that round table, won't he?
Oh, for sure. And, you know, I think that's the thing with all these guys. And I think even the guys that left, you know, I saw this morning, you know, Brock Vandegrift goes in the portal on Monday, and, you know, I saw Brock Bauer's mom and Oscar Delp's mom sharing, you know, how much, you know, he's meant to them and how excited they are. You know, Georgia wants those guys to stick around, but I do think that people understand that there's a buy-in, and that, you know, what they've done is hard. I mean, I think that's what Kirby told them after the game, like, what you guys have accomplished, you know, it's really, really difficult.
Yeah.
And, you know, he knows people are going to leave, but I think that there's still that shared respect and understanding what they've done to even get to this point as a Georgia Bulldog.
Yeah. And a quarterback's a tough position. I mean, if Carson Beck comes back next year, I can get that. And that's why quarterback, way before we ever had the portal, October 15th of 2018, when it became the law of the land, 42% of quarterbacks finished their college careers at a place different than where they started it. I bet that number is a lot higher now.
Yeah, and even look at the Heisman. You know, 3 of the 4 guys are quarterbacks who have transferred, and the other one is the best receiver in the country, Marvin Harrison Jr. I mean, yeah, it's just the way it goes. I'm really fascinated just from a college football standpoint to see where some of these quarterbacks who have gone in this year go, because it is a super deep class of quarterbacks, and there's going to be some teams really hunting for a new QB and trying to make something happen with a new guy leading the offense.
Yeah, and looking now at what you've seen out of this committee, looking at it objectively, I know you've got and follow Jordan on the Junkyard Dog cast. I like that. I'm myopically wired to think, because I remember James Browne in 1976, 77, and Erskine Russell, Auburn man with Vince Dooley, he was at Auburn when my dad was there. The Junkyard Dogs, but it's Junkyard Dog Cast. I love that. That's easy to remember, folks. I mean, I'm looking at it right now on YouTube. It's great. Follow that. And I know there are a lot of Georgia fans that I hear from that watch this show. Do yourself a favor. Follow Jordan and all the great work that he does. But looking at the committee, if you looked at it objectively, do you think they got it right, or were they trying to be fair?
I don't think they got it right. I don't think you can defend leaving Florida State out. I think that Florida State should have got that 4th spot. I think that, as a lot of people have pointed out, that they've really opened up a can of worms when it comes to transparency with injuries. Because what if, I mean, again, we saw the injury to Jordan Travis. I mean, his leg was pointed the wrong direction. It's pretty clear what happened on that play. Yeah. But if they played it close to the vest and said, look, he's not going to be available right now, we think we can get him back, instead of, just coming out and saying he's done for the season. I just think when you look at injuries, I mean, everybody's hurt this time of year. I don't think that you can, explain that away. And I know that, I'm sure if an Alabama fan's listening to this, they're thinking, well, this is sour grapes on my part because, Alabama beat Georgia. But I mean, Florida State went undefeated. They beat LSU, they beat Florida. Took care of business throughout the year. I think that you kind of have to give a boost for them winning in spite of having to play their 3rd string quarterback. I know it's not pretty, but they did everything they could to get it. Alabama did have that one loss to Texas. I would have had Florida State in for that 4th spot and had Alabama 5th and then Georgia 6th.
Yeah. Look, I know you're on a tight schedule. You said you got a little bit of time this morning. Let them know how they can follow you, keep up with all the great work you do. And as always, we really appreciate you to stop in and join us on Sidelines on this Tuesday edition from Smyrna, not Atlanta.
Definitely.
Police cars.
Right. Dogs247.com. I tell people listening, we have a 60% off deal. I believe it ends Wednesday night, kind of a transfer portal sale that we got, 60% off a VIP sale. Go to Twitter at Jordan Davis Hill, on Twitter at Dogs247. And Junkyard Dogcast, as you guys mentioned, we are doing a live podcast on YouTube over at 12 p.m. Eastern time, talking about all the portal mess, and I'm sure digging into a whole lot of other stuff and what has been a super busy week. And Rob, it's only Tuesday, so that's that.
Hey, look, cost is only an issue in the absence of any added value. Good luck trying to get this information on your own. It would cost you a fortune. What Jordan's offering is worth its weight in gold bullion. Have a great one, man. We'll talk to you soon.
Sounds great. Thanks, Rob.
All right. You got to love the work being done. I mean, seriously, Jordan Hill, Jason Caldwell, a lot of these guys have worked together, covering the same school, and they go to different schools. But I'm telling you, they respect one another, and I respect what they do. Every event that I go to, these guys are hustling. I mean, they are there way before the game and long after the game, getting the interviews, getting the pictures, putting everything together. The content, whether it's Auburn Undercover or 24/7 Sports for Georgia, these guys really, really, really are getting with it. We're gonna do this. We're gonna take a quick break here in a couple of minutes. But before that, I want to get to some of the comments on here. I mean, there's just some really, really good ones. And I'm, looking at it. Whoa, right here. Okay. So by the committee rationale, Washington should be out, as they did to FSU and Georgia put in. I'm not sure really what the committee's rationale was. They were overt, as Jordan put it, out in the open, word wealth, to say, okay, Jordan Travis broke his leg. He's not coming back. He's out for the year. The story should be, look what Florida State did with their 2nd and then their 3rd string quarterback, Brock Glenn, out of Covington, Tennessee, just north of Memphis in Tipton County, home of Kaiser Jameson Fisher Insurance Agency, Edward Kaiser, brother Hezekiah. That's a story right there. But when you've only got 4 teams, I guess, Washington, how good is Washington? How good? Oregon's pretty darn good. Washington's pretty darn good. They've won 8 of their last 9 games, Washington has, by single digits. That typically makes you a better football team when you keep winning those close games. Washington has 13 fifth-year seniors, 13 sixth-year seniors. Experience matters. Michael Penix came from Indiana with Kalen DeBoer, offensive coordinator, now head coach at Washington. Bo Nix transferred from Auburn. He couldn't take the Brian Harsin stuff. Goes out there, has a year with Kenny Dillingham, who was with him in 2019 at Auburn. And the last couple of years have been nothing short of sensational for Bo Nix, who's played in like 60 games. More than 60. Played in a lot of games. But, he broke his ankle in the Mississippi State game when Auburn was up 28-3 in that meltdown when Auburn lost 43-38. But that's another story. I don't know. Who are the four best teams? I'm with Tony Barnhart. I'll say my four are Michigan, Texas, Georgia, and Alabama. Now, Florida State, they have no one to blame but themselves. Bobby Bowden, 31 years ago, rebuffed the SEC's offers a couple of times to join the SEC. He thought there was a better way to skin a cat, as he put it, and join the ACC. Then, back in February of 22, the Alliance, the ACC, the Big Ten, and the Pac-12 got together and said, we will not go and vote for a college football playoff expansion to 12 teams before the 24 season. And there you go. Florida State, first team out. Number 5, Georgia, number 6. It's hard to believe Georgia would fall from number 1 to number 6. But again, what are you looking at it? And what context are you looking at it in? Everybody is intrinsically focused on, with Georgia, the body of work over the last 3 years, going for a three-peat of national championships. Look, it's not fun if you're a Georgia fan right now. It makes you mad, but Kirby Smart will have that team ready, and so will Mike Norvell. They're bothered by this, but they're competitors. Look, if you're a tennis player and you take this long to get over getting aced, and you're not over in the next court, you're going to get aced again and again. So you better get over it. And they will. They will not be hanging their heads, feeling sorry for themselves. Because if Georgia or Florida State, either one of those teams is, you'll know it in the first series. It'll be 49-0. I don't see that happening. Two great programs, loaded with talent. And is there a better defense in college football than what Florida State has? I'm talking anybody, Alabama, Georgia, Michigan. Who really, honestly, ask yourself, who has a better defense than Florida State? Man, they are tough. And they got penalized. If Jordan Travis is healthy, they are in the playoff. I think they're in over Washington. There was a lot of sentimental love for Washington this year in the Pac-12 because this is it. After 108 years, the Conference of Champions is going out of business. That's what I think happened. I just honestly think that the committee of 13, there are 2 coaches on that committee. You hope that they did the best that they can. And we'll get Bill Hancock on here hopefully next week to talk about it. In the meantime, we are going to take a quick commercial break and come back and talk to Rodney Orr, Tider Insider, after this.
In a perfect world, you'd set a health goal and results would happen overnight. In this world, the real world, it takes time, dedication, and the right support to achieve your best self. The Vitamin Shop's health enthusiasts are here to make sure you're not wasting a single moment on the wrong supplements. From the highest quality sports nutrition and superfoods to the most sought after trends, you'll find a huge variety of science-backed solutions for every goal. And the people to help guide you along the path to greatness.
Unbelievably, every 2 minutes in our communities, a child is either bought or sold for sex. I am R.A. Dickey, board member for the Nashville Anti-Human Trafficking Coalition. Join me and millions of others in our fight against human trafficking and for its victims by helping to educate the most vulnerable among us, our middle and high school students. Go to nhtcoalition.org, become a partner, and help keep our families safe, because none of God's children are for sale.
All right, Rob Browne back here with you. Rodney Orr, Tyler Insider, joins us in just a minute. Let me say something also. It is Christmas season, man. Merry Christmas to everybody. Happy Hanukkah. Listeners, viewers, everybody out there. Hewlett and Dunn Boot and Clothing Company on the historic square in Collierville, Tennessee, right there, Shelby County, right next to Memphis. That is an incredible store. They have the largest selection of duck heads I've ever seen in my life. Pants, shirts, jackets, blazers, vests, unbelievable T-shirts with that famous duck since 1865. That's right. Been around a long time. They're the second largest Filson dealer in the Southeast U.S. They have Filson stuff coming in every day. Hunting jackets, waterfowl jackets. They've got the Filson down vest and the full-length Filson long sleeve down jacket, the warmest jacket known to man. Got these great looking camouflage duckhead pants, the Upland duckhead pants, Old South t-shirts, Old South button downs, long sleeve t-shirts, the best. I got these boot socks out there, Hiawassee socks, thermo socks, unbelievable socks for hunting, for wearing boots, for hiking, Danner boots, Vask boots, Hire boots, over 7,000 pairs of men's and women's boots and kids' boots, kids' toys. They got everything you can imagine in this store. Schaefer Outdoors, for land for life since 1982. These are the wardrobe consultants, let me remind you, for the TV show Yellowstone. Rip's jacket, John Dutton's ranch jacket. They've got it all at Hewlett and Dunn. And STS luggage, great looking jackets, men's and women's clothes. I can talk all day about how many good looking stuff they have for the women. My wife Audrey loves to shop at Hewlett and Dunn. I've got dresses. They've got Barber, all Barber jackets, Barber quilted jackets, Barber sweaters, shirts. Unbelievable selection of men's and women's clothing. And one other thing to remember, they can redo your boots. If you need boots to be repaired, you can take them in there. The owner, Charles Hall, and his wife, Laura, stand ready to take care of you. It'll be the greatest buying experience you've ever had. Hewlett and Dunn, also the Rock Mount shirts that Elvis wore, Ronald Reagan, Robert Plant wears them, Bob Dylan wears them, Roger Daltrey wears them. They're great looking shirts, the button downs. You cannot beat them, and they've got a 50% off rack right up front by the cash register. Just do yourself a favor. Go to Hewlett and Dunn. It's a buying and clothing experience like you have never experienced. HewlettandDunn.com. Proud to have them as a sponsor of Sidelines, and even prouder to say that I love wearing their clothes. Great looking stuff. Hewlett and Dunn Boot and Clothing Company on the historic square in Collierville, Tennessee. And they're open Monday through Saturday, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. And now that it's Christmas season, they're open on Sundays from 1 to 5 p.m. Go out there to that square in Collierville. You'll have a lot of fun. Look, man, college football, it's the gift that keeps on giving. You know, last week it was the Bobby Petrino story. And look, talking to Wes Moore yesterday, he said 90% of the Arkansas fan base is okay with it. Put it this way, the power brokers at Arkansas are okay with it. And folks, spare me the righteous indignation of the sanctimonious, preaching from people. Tell me your school isn't interested in winning more than anything. Because that's what they're there for. They want to win. And Bobby Petrino, everybody knows what happened. But again, everybody out there needs to think about this. In your own life, if you've done some stupid stuff, yeah, You have. I mean, not that it's okay. I'm just saying Bobby Petrino has been raked across the coals. Can you imagine if you do something, if everything you do is under a microscope, which it is really? Well, he's paid for it. Not that what he did was okay, not condoning that, but he's back in college football. Arkansas felt, hey, it's the time to do it. And according to what Wes Moore said, Sam Pittman made that decision on his own. So let's bring in another one of the great ones, as Yancey Porter calls him, an OG, one of the original guys,
Yeah.
one of the original guys. Rodney, the love and the just sympathy and all for Alabama from fan bases around the country this last few days is just, it's been heartwarming, hasn't it? But you're back in, and I got to tell you something. You said it in the spring. You said it in the summer. You said the quarterback for Alabama is going to be Jalen Milroe, and he's just the one that gives them the best chance to win. And we all talked about Kevin Steele, and I hope Kevin Steele is in Little Rock for the Broyles Award because he should be there.
Yeah, I would agree that he's done a fantastic job. Kevin Steele. I mean, look, I don't think there was really anything wrong with Alabama's defense before he got here from a, schematic, technical standpoint, however you want to phrase it. I think it was between the years, and, he kind of did things that got the players' focus, and, they've become much more fundamentally sound. They're just a well-coached defensive team, obviously. I mean, and it's hard to play defense these days. So I'm not talking about 2011. That's kind of Alabama fans. That's how they judge things. But it's not that game anymore. So, I really think that it all starts on offense, though, right now, the way that Alabama's kind of transformed since the last couple of years. I think that Nick Saban at the end of last year realized that it's not really the defense in terms of the scheme. They just have to get the mindset right and the fundamentals and all of those things. It was the offense that had to be fixed. They had to get back to playing a physical style of football that starts up front and, that can really run the ball. They'd gotten away from that. It had actually become, in some ways, it almost looked backyardish, and just standing back there every play and, looking to throw the ball. And it really had slipped offensively. But, I think that's a key, Rob. I think what you saw Saturday against Georgia was an Alabama team that won the game kind of the old fashioned way. In other words, I don't think Milroe played a great game. He had some great moments.
Mm-hmm.
He had some big plays, but they won the game up front on both sides of the ball, I think. And, they didn't turn the ball over. They ran the ball, again, we're talking about Georgia. So, but given that, they ran the ball effectively and they stopped Georgia's run game, held them to 78 yards. So, I think that's a real key. And I think if Milroe can get consistent throwing the ball, then they'll be really tough in the playoffs.
Yeah. You look at Michigan's is a good team.
Really good team.
And I was talking to one of my best friends yesterday, lives in Atlanta, and we were talking about Jim Harbaugh. And I said, I like the guy. He's kind of quirky, but I like the white socks. That's a good look. The birth control glasses, not so much, and he tucks in his sweatshirts, but he's from a good conservative, strong Catholic family. And he took his team to watch a movie that I hate what it was about, but it's a great movie about the people. We Were Soldiers with Mel Gibson. He had them watch that as a team. He does stuff like that. And I think what I really love about him the most is he gets under one of the most vulgar people out there, Ryan Day, the coach at Ohio State. You're going to go pick a fight with Lou Holtz? Oh, you're a tough guy. I think the Harbaugh Saban thing's going to be fun. And one of my buddies made a point. He said, I think the committee looked at it and say what you want. This is a damn business, man. And I think they said, who do people around the country want to watch? Harbaugh versus Saban or Harbaugh versus Mike Norvell? I'm a big Mike Norvell fan. I just think that it gets down to the eyeballs, and I think it gets down to money, and that's what happens. But Alabama, Rodney, I'm gonna say this, and I'm a graduate of Auburn, but you have to be fair, and nobody's gonna take you seriously. If this were Auburn or LSU or Georgia, Tennessee, Arkansas, they were number 8, and they were told, okay, you got to play the number 1 team that's won 29 straight games, back-to-back, going for a three-peat of national championship. You got to play them in Atlanta, where they're going to have 70 or 80% of the tickets because they've known forever they were going to be there. And let's be honest, I know how the corporate structure works, and so do you. You're going to have to – but if you beat number 1, you're not going to be number 1 necessarily, but you should at least be 4 or 3 in the playoff rankings. You name me a fan base out there, if they're honest with themselves, that would refuse to believe, oh, yeah, if we beat number 1 and we're 12-1 with that track record Georgia has, you can't keep us out of the playoff. So that the one nobody wants to admit, and I'm not saying this to curry favor with you because, I always believe you got to speak what you really believe. They got it right on Alabama probably more than anybody. Uh-oh, we lost you. Rodney? All right. Well, Rodney, are you there? Okay. We'll get him back. But I do think, you name me a fan base, if they were number 8 and you beat number 1, how can you keep that team out of the playoffs? Rodney, I think my question may have been too much.
No, I actually heard everything you said. You just couldn't hear me for some reason.
Sorry.
No, what I was going to say is, and people can believe this or not, whatever. Actually, I did have a really strong source connected very closely to the committee, and I was being told all along, if Alabama wins, if Alabama beats Georgia, they're in.
Yeah.
You even heard the SEC commissioner said when he was asked about people saying, that if Alabama won, that they still, SEC would be left out in the cold. And he said, well, people who know football aren't saying that.
Yeah.
And that's basically what I was hearing. And, really, Rob, what I think is based on the things I'm told, is Alabama was in. Once they beat Georgia, they were in. The question was really, don't look at the rankings in terms of Texas is 3 and Alabama's 4. It's kind of window dressing. That once Alabama won, that propelled Texas in as well. And so that's really, I think, what it came down to. I don't think FSU without the quarterback, they weren't getting in unless, chaos ensued. But so anyway, it is what it is. I think people are probably sick of hearing about it. And some people say, did Alabama get preferred? No, they did. Well, maybe in some ways they did get preferential treatment because they're really good.
Yeah.
They got they've had a lot of success, obviously, and they've gotten a lot better this year. It's hard to argue when you go in and play in the game of the year against Georgia, the number 1 team, 29 straight wins. Everybody saying this is the number 1 team. And you know what? That's really true. I think Georgia, absolutely 100%, is one of the top 2 teams in the country. That's what I believe. I don't believe Michigan would beat Georgia. I don't believe Texas would beat Georgia. I don't.
No.
So anyway, with all that said, it is what it is. We got the 4 teams. So,
Well, you know what, Rodney? Kevin Skarvinsky had a good thing on here about it. He said, look, about the ACC 6-4 record versus the SEC, a thread. It wasn't a true ACC-SEC challenge with number 1 versus number 2 versus number 2, et cetera. It was a random scheduling by individual schools. FSU, the ACC champ, won 2 of those games. Alabama, the SEC champ, did not play an ACC team. Now, I'm not attacking the ACC. I'm just presenting some facts. And Kevin goes on to further say that the SEC's best win in the 10 games, 7-5 Kentucky over 10-3 Louisville on the road in the last regular season game. The ACC's best win in the series, 13-0 FSU over 9-3 LSU at a neutral site and FSU's home state in the first regular season game. Well, Orlando, which is the I believe truly, Rodney, home of the Witness Protection Program. Because how many third generation Orlandonians do you know? I mean, unless they're carnies or something, you know. But okay, 3 of the SEC's 4 wins came against ACC teams that finished the season 500 or better overall. 3 of the SEC. Okay, you point out 4 of the ACC's 6 wins came against SEC teams that finished the season with a losing record overall. In 8 of the 10 games, the team that finished the season with a better record won the game. But you look down here and you just point out the fact that all right, the SEC had 5 teams finish in the top 14. The ACC had 1. And that, I mean, it's just, they're looking at I think now, what is the committee supposed to look at? They're humans, Rodney. They're, as Carl Sagan would say, they're human beings. There's an H in there. For $50, can we buy an H? But am I right?
I agree.
Yeah. I mean,
yeah, no, I think you're 100% right.
Yeah. And you cannot wipe out somebody's lifetime of experiences, what they see. And
yeah, no, you're right. You're right about that. And I'll look, they keep saying, okay, it's not the best teams, it's the most deserving teams. Well, aren't the best teams the most deserving?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't really understand. I mean, I think you got to look at the best teams. You got to look at the conferences overall. You got to weigh all the factors, all the things that you just listed there. I think all of those things are extremely important when you start looking at it. And, you know, if you had to bet your money on all 4 of these teams against Florida State, all 4 of them, you would go with all 4 of them, right? You would. I mean, if you had to. Now, look, people saying this Georgia-Florida game, Georgia-Florida State bowl game, I don't think you can put anything on that. I don't know how many players from Georgia is going to play.
Yeah, we talked about that with Jordan Hill and Tony Barnhart. You don't think that many will quit on them. I don't use the term opt out. That's too nice. But it's important to them. And there's going to be guys transfer, but I have a feeling Kirby Smart, like you said, we'll find out early on. Hey, if you're going to quit, announce it now. Don't wait till a day before the game to tell us you're going to quit. Rodney. Yeah, you know, and look, fans have gotten so cynical, and I can see why a lot of them are. But, you know, yeah, you can't put Bama in without putting in Texas. Now that's a good argument, Kelly. Kelly, I don't know you, but you're smart. You know football, and I love the stuff that you put up here. But Rodney, one of our viewers, Kelly Leak, you can't put Bama in without putting in Texas. Yes. You know, my 4 teams are, and I thought about this when I was eating a 2-pound brisket sandwich, and I was thinking about this, and it's Alabama, Georgia, Texas, and Michigan. Those are the 4, to me, best teams right now. Now, Florida State, that's a cool story what they did with the 13 quarterback. But Rodney, look at this. You have the chairman of the committee, Boo Corrigan, whose father, Gene Corrigan, and Tony Barnhart talked about this earlier this morning on Sidelines in the first segment. Gene Corrigan, he said, one of the greatest people he's ever met, former commissioner of the ACC. He's the AD now at NC State. You had Jim Grobe, former football coach at Wake Forest, on that committee. You don't think if they would have felt like they needed to stand up and make a case for FSU, they wouldn't have done it? I mean, and we have Bill Hancock on this show frequently. I'm going to have him on next week. I mean, you know, how many – I'm lucky enough to have been around him a little bit. I know a lot of people that know him very well. It's a no-win situation to be on that committee because you're going to have 4 groups that are happy and everybody else mad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I'm with you, man. I'm with you. 100%. But how about the game, Rob? What'd you think?
Well, believe it or not, my son Wilson, who's mergers and acquisitions in banking up in Charlotte, 72% on the year. Now we don't pick every game, but he had Bama. He said, he's an Auburn grad, and golly, man, I just call it like I see it. And I talk to the May brothers every day. We do a lot of strategizing. I had Alabama to win 31-15. It's just there's something about Nick Saban when he plays Kirby Smart in the Georgia Dome. In betting, like in the stock market, there's a thing called the 200-day moving average. In betting, it's the trend is your friend. And I felt like Alabama would win because the reason why a lot of people would say Bama barely beat a 500 Auburn team. That's why they're going to win. They're going to be told all week long, do you realize what almost happened to you? And do you realize what's in front of you? That's the power of psychology. Because once your mind expands from its original size and it grows, it never reverts back to where it was. Criticize fan bases all you want, but when you win a boatload of national championships, your fans are going to expect that every time. Once you eat the best steak in town, you're never going to be okay with a Salisbury steak again. That's life, isn't it, Rodney?
Yeah, I hear you, man. You're 100% right. I think what we saw, and Alabama's been in that same situation that Georgia was in, on Saturday. You've won a lot of games in a row, 26, 28, 29, whatever Georgia had won, they won 29. But Alabama's been in that situation, very similar. And it's hard, man. It's hard because, there's a lot of pressure. You've won so many games, and now you're playing a high-quality team that can beat you and that's hungry. And I think for the first time in a while, Alabama's the hungry team again. And that's an advantage, man. That's a real advantage. And it's a disadvantage for a team like Georgia that's won a lot of games. And look, I know that Georgia's saying, well, we were beat up and this and that and the other. You just got beat at the line of scrimmage. You got it. Look, to me, the difference in the games was those third and fourth downs that I think Georgia normally makes and has made in the national championship game, a couple of years ago. That they didn't make those. They got stuffed. They got stuffed. They didn't have anything with Ladd McConkey being a little gimpy. Didn't have anything with Brock Bowers. He was probably close to 100%. I know Kirby was, came out with a bunch of excuses, but, Kirby's usually when they win, it's next man up. But on Saturday, it was a lot of injuries. A freshman blew a coverage and all those things. I'm not trying to be hard, but the fact is, Alabama's been in that situation. Jamison Williams and John Mechie both went down, a couple of years ago. It's just my point is this. It's not the, jump on Kirby or whatever. It's just things happen that keep you from winning 3 national championships in a row. Yeah. Rob, I've seen it with Alabama. I saw it in 78 and 79, then in 1980. Things change. Things happen.
Yeah.
I saw it in 2011, 2012, and then what happens? 2013, they lose to Auburn, kick 6.
Yeah.
Crazy things happen that keep you from winning 3 in a row. I mean, it happens.
Yeah. That's why coaches say football's a 60-minute game. You've got to play a full 60, and the fans need to stay the full 60. I mean, and that game Saturday was a great example of, you're right. You can be too successful and just get fat and happy. That's called complacency. You'll rot in hell if you get complacent. You're not going to survive. You've got to stay hungry.
Yeah, and you know what, Rob? I don't really think Georgia Kirby does a great job. I don't really know that they were complacent per se, as much as it is. It just the ball bounces a weird way sometimes. I mean, and things go against you. You could sit here and say there's 2 plays that were the difference in that game. 2 plays.
Yeah.
You could say the missed field goal when Georgia guy Woodring hits the upright, okay? Yeah. And the fumble that Alabama recovers that Reichard converts with a field goal. Okay, so that's a 3-point difference. Yes. You take that fumble away, and you take that missed Georgia field goal away, and the script is flipped. It's 27-24 Georgia. That's the difference between two winning these games like this.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I get that. I get that. And it just happened to go Alabama's way this time.
Look, I remember having this conversation with one of the smartest football guys I know, my roommate one year at Auburn, Richard Morrow from Memphis, went to MUS. He said, Rob, Coach Rudolph used to always tell us, most every football game is the same. They're decided on 4 or 5 plays. That's why you've got to pay attention to details. And I don't care what anybody says. And you get a team, Nick Saban has a degree. I don't know what his degree is in, but it looks like it's psychology. Because my wife, I mean, I'm up here at Mallory's, and she's laid back as Willie Nelson. I mean, she really is. Now, my dad's laid back as Willie Nelson on Valium, but she's an Alabama grad, and she just and I'm on a lot of threads with Auburn and Alabama friends, and we have a lot of fun with each other. But they just expect to win. Georgia expects to win. Most programs are waiting for the other shoe to drop, Rodney. That's the problem.
Yeah. Well, no, say that again, Rob. I'm sorry.
Alabama and Georgia expect to win.
Yeah.
Most other programs out there, their fans are waiting for the other shoe to drop. They're afraid to embrace success because they somehow see it as a burden.
Yeah. Well, it is. It can be. It's a heavy crown to wear. I can tell you that. And but also I'll say this too, Rob, what's crazy when you think about it from an Alabama perspective, and I think about this, you talk about the expectations of fans, of programs. And I think about, the success Alabama's had and, the championships and all that stuff, and it's never enough. I mean, it's just never enough. The fans continuously want more. And then I sit back and I think about, growing up in South Texas, I was surrounded by Aggies and Longhorns my whole life. And I think about these Aggies. I had a Aggie friend of mine who now is, of course, he's a big Alabama fan because because of our relationship. But he texted me on Saturday and he was congratulating me or whatever, Alabama, for winning. And he says, it's painful to be an Aggie. And, I got to thinking, I was like, man, do you know how much they would give just to go to the SEC championship game?
Yeah.
I mean, and here Alabama's going, Saban's won his last 9 appearances in the SEC championship game. Yeah. I mean, it's all about perspective, man. I mean, it really is.
Yeah, and life in Texas is tough. We watched the movie last night, No Country for Old Men. Never knew what you could do with a nail gun. Man, pressure. But, look, you're right. They have all the money. As Franz Beard always says, only God and the Longhorns have more money than the Aggies. Since 1970, how many national championships has the state of Texas given us between A&M and Texas?
Well, Texas won it. Yeah, Texas won it in 2005. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean that's hard to believe. It just goes to show you that's why so many people who have a ton of money that don't make their kids work wonder why their kids are in and out of rehab.
Yeah.
I mean, and then why they struggle. Alabama, the thing that, and it's not like it's been without pain. 82 to 2009, that 27-year period, Alabama won 1 national title in between in 92. And they won 2 or 3 SEC championships. And now look what they've done. There hasn't been a period since Nick Saban's been in Alabama, a native of Monongahela, West Virginia, where they have gone 3 years without playing for a national championship.
Yeah.
You think they just show up and get lucky because they put on that jersey? I mean, some people think that. I don't care if I'm an Auburn fan or not. I call it like I see it. You've got a lot of fans that are out there waiting for the other shoe to drop, thinking of coming up with conspiracy theories. You want to get better? Go get better players. Support I don't like NIL, but I'll tell you what, as long as it's the rule, you better support your school's NIL program or you're going to be 7-5 at best or 8-4 every year. And if you bring in a bunch of kids just for a bag of money that don't love the school and really want to be there, you're going to end up like schools out there that did that.
Well, Rob, think about this too. on the NIL, a lot of these guys that are getting money, I wonder how many of them now, you look at the portal, guys jumping in the portal.
Yeah.
And I don't want to really mention any names, but Texas A&M's already had a few jump in the portal.
Yeah.
That reportedly got big NIL deals. So what did buying these players really do for your program? Nothing. You've lost them with the portal there. I mean, it's just a big risk. And I think that, we'll continue to see that. I do. I mean, I know there's a top player that's going to announce on Friday, Jordan Seaton, and the word is that, basically he had been leaning to Alabama much earlier in the process, but that NIL is going to become a huge factor, and that Oregon and Tennessee are in there very strongly.
Yeah.
So, I mean, what if he goes there? What if he goes there and it doesn't work out and he hits the portal in a year or two? I mean, it's just crazy.
Yeah, and look, when you manage money like I do, you can talk. They'll say, "Hey, we want to buy this or that," and I go, "Look, I'm going to get paid well, but it's not suitable for you." Same thing when you do NIL. I talk to people at different schools, privately. So I'm not naming schools or anything like that, but they will tell you. You have the conversation with these student athletes about, look, don't just come here on a game weekend. Come down on a Wednesday or Thursday in an off week. In the middle of winter, in the spring, make sure this is where you want to spend the next 3 or 4 years of your life. Because if you come here and you work your ass off and you do it right, and you take to the coaching and everything that's provided for you, nothing is given to you. Everything is earned. If you do all of that, you'll have something way more valuable than NIL. That's a fact. I mean, you look at guys, you name me a player at Alabama or Georgia or Tennessee, Auburn, LSU, Florida, Ole Miss, Mississippi State, that goes there, works hard, gets their degree, that can't come back and tap in to unbelievable resources for jobs and business opportunities for the rest of their life and their children and their children's children. I mean, that's why NIL, that's why the free market, it's already correcting it. You're watching it happen right now. There are schools that have big NIL programs like A&M, number 1 in the country on the list that I saw, and they went 7-5. How in the wide world of sports does that happen? It's because if you're not all in and you don't believe in what you're fighting for, you're going to be like a Chinese or a Russian soldier versus an American soldier. There is no greater soldier in the world, in my opinion, than an Irish Catholic Marine with 10 30-round magazines and a bunch of Marines around him. Nobody beats that. Nobody. That's just my opinion.
Rob, I don't really know how to respond to that other than
a lot of coffee.
Yeah.
But it just, to me, you just look at it. You've got to be careful with this NIL. You better get kids that really want to be there.
No, you're right about that. I mean, you're 100% right, because like I said, I mean, you can look at the portal and look at guys that took the money up front and they're not satisfied. I mean, they're not pleased with where they are. They and Nick Saban said this so long, from the very beginning. He said, you're being short-sighted if you don't take all of these things into consideration. You should be able to go to school, and if your brand earns you some money, you create your value for yourself. And if it earns you some money, great. You should be able to do that.
Yeah.
But, it's not like purchasing players up front. That's not the intent.
No, it's not. Look, we've run out of time. We're a little bit long today, but let me say real quick, guys, most often we see the face of Christ in the least among us, and we talk about it a lot, but I mean it 100%. We live in the greatest country in the history of the world because we got the greatest people, folks like Rodney Orr of Tider Insider, and to all of our guests, listeners, viewers, comments, unbelievable. Thank you so much. And Rodney, tag out by letting them know how they can follow you and keep up with all the great work you're putting out. And if I'm lucky, tomorrow night on Audrey's birthday, I'm going to get to go to Tuscaloosa on the way back from Atlanta to Memphis for the state championship game, but I'm going to have to sell that one real hard. I just don't know what it's going to cost me, Rodney.
Well, TiderInsider.com. It's only $48 a year, and you can get instant access with your credit card if you prefer. There is an address there to send a check, but it gives you all our premium information. But part of that, too, is our all sports forum. It's our community of Alabama fans, Rob. And I mean, I'm just telling you, it's nonstop on TiderInsider.com.
I bet it is wild as always. But hey, look, everybody take care. Thanks for listening. We'll see you tomorrow. We are out of here.